The text message arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was sanding the hull of a 30-foot sailboat in my workshop. The notification chime cut through the whir of my orbital sander, and something about its timing felt ominous. I should have ignored it. We just need you at our wedding for closure. Please, Nick. It would mean everything to us. Lila. I stared at the screen for a full minute, watching sawdust settle on the glass. 4 years. 4 years since I'd walked into my own bedroom and found my wife of 8 years tangled up with Evan Drake, her supposed best friend who'd been coming around our house for barbecues and game nights since college. Just friends, she'd always insisted when I'd raised an eyebrow at their inside jokes and lingering hugs. Don't be so insecure, Nick. Turns out my insecurity was actually called intuition. I set the phone down and went back to sanding. The repetitive motion helped me think, and right now I needed to process this audacious request. Lila Caldwell. She'd kept my name through the divorce, probably because it sounded better than going back to Lila Brennan, wanted me at her wedding, to Evan, for closure. The irony was rich enough to choke on. My phone buzzed again, then again. By the time I'd finished the port side of the hull, I had 6 messages waiting. Nick, please respond. I know this is hard, but we need to move forward. Lila. Hey man, it's Evan. I hope you'll consider coming. We both want you there. Evan. Nick, it's Rachel. Lila really needs this. Can you please just think about it? Unknown number. The last one made me laugh out loud. Rachel Murphy, Lila's childhood friend and chief enabler, had somehow gotten my number. I'd changed it twice since the divorce specifically to avoid this kind of contact. I typed back a simple response. No thanks. Then I blocked all 3 numbers and went back to work. The boat I was restoring belonged to Dr. Patricia Wells, a retired surgeon who'd commissioned me to bring her father's 1970s Catalina back to sailing condition. It was meticulous work, stripping old varnish, replacing rotted deck boards, rewiring the electrical system. The kind of project that required patience, skill, and attention to detail. Everything my marriage had lacked, apparently. My business, Caldwell Marine Restoration, had grown steadily over the past 4 years. What started as a way to keep my hands busy during the divorce had evolved into something I was genuinely proud of. I had a waiting list of clients, a workshop full of beautiful old boats, and enough money in the bank to buy my own place instead of renting. The physical work had been therapeutic too. 4 years ago, I'd been a soft 38-year-old insurance adjuster with a beer gut and chronic back pain. Now I was 42, lean and strong enough to single-handedly flip a 16-foot skiff. Grief and rage, it turned out, made excellent workout motivation. My phone rang around noon. I almost ignored it, but the caller ID showed my neighbor, Mrs. Eleanor Clary. Hello, Mrs. Clary. Nick, dear, I hope you don't mind me calling. There's a young woman at your front door who seems quite upset. She says she's a friend of your ex-wife? I sighed. My workshop was behind my house, accessible through the backyard. Mrs. Clary, bless her nosy heart, kept watch over the neighborhood like a benevolent hawk. What does she look like? Blonde, very put together, expensive handbag. She's been knocking for about 10 minutes. That would be Maddie Chen, Lila's coworker and wedding planning accomplice. I'd met her a few times during the marriage. She worked in PR for some biotech company and had the kind of aggressive friendliness that made my teeth itch. Thanks for letting me know. I'll handle it. I walked around to the front of my house, wiping sawdust off my hands with a shop rag. Sure enough, Maddie was standing on my porch in a cream-colored blazer and heels, looking like she was about to give a presentation to shareholders. Nick, thank goodness. I was starting to worry you weren't home. I work in the back. What can I do for you, Maddie? She smiled, but her eyes were nervous. Can we talk inside? This is kind of a delicate situation. I'm pretty busy today. What's on your mind? Her smile faltered slightly. It's about Lila's wedding. She really needs you there, Nick. I know it sounds strange, but it doesn't sound strange. It sounds insane. Please, just hear me out. Lila has been struggling with guilt about how things ended between you two. She can't move forward with Evan until she knows you've forgiven her. It's eating her alive. I almost laughed. Forgiven her? Maddie, she cheated on me with my friend for God knows how long, then married him 6 months after our divorce was finalized. What exactly am I supposed to forgive? She made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. Having a year-long affair is a choice. Maddie's composure cracked slightly. Look, I know you're angry, but this wedding is happening whether you approve or not. Wouldn't it be better to show everyone that you're the bigger person, that you've moved on? There was something desperate in her voice that caught my attention. This wasn't just about Lila's feelings. There was more to this story. Why does my opinion matter so much? They're already married in everything but name. It's not about your opinion. It's about, she paused, choosing her words carefully. There are people who still judge them for how their relationship started. If you were there showing your support, it would help their reputation in the community. Now we were getting somewhere. Whose reputation are we talking about? Lila's or Evan's? Both. Look, Evan's real estate business has suffered because of the gossip. People don't trust him. And Lila's been having a hard time at work because everyone knows the story. They need this wedding to be a fresh start, but they can't have that if you're out there as this bitter ex-husband who won't even show up. I studied her face. The desperation was real, but there was something else. Fear, maybe? What happens if I don't come? Nothing. Nothing happens. It would mean a lot to them. She was lying. Something about my absence terrified them, and I was starting to understand why. Tell me something, Maddie. What story has Lila been telling people about our marriage? Her face went pale. What do you mean? I mean, how has she been explaining the divorce? What version of events has she been sharing with your coworkers and her family? I don't think that's really... Because if she's been painting me as some kind of monster to justify her affair, then my showing up happy and successful kind of ruins that narrative, doesn't it? Maddie took a step back. I should go. But if I don't show up, people might wonder why. They might start asking questions about what really happened. They might realize that the wrong party usually doesn't attend his cheater ex-wife's wedding to her affair partner. Nick, please, tell Lila I said no thanks. And Maddie, don't come to my house again. I went back inside and watched through the window as she hurried to her car, already dialing her phone. Whatever conversation she was about to have, I wished I could hear it. My phone started ringing 20 minutes later. Unknown numbers. All of them. I let every call go to voicemail. By Thursday, the voicemails had piled up like snow in a blizzard. I finally listened to them while eating dinner, mostly for entertainment value. Nick, it's Greg Patterson, Evan's friend. Listen, I know this whole situation is weird, but Evan really wants to clear the air with you. Can you give me a call? This is Father Mackenzie from St. Mary's. I'm officiating Lila and Evan's wedding, and I understand there might be some unresolved feelings. I'd be happy to speak with you about forgiveness and healing. Nick, it's Rachel again. I got your new number from the phone book. We really need to talk. This is bigger than just the wedding. That last one caught my attention. Rachel Murphy had been Lila's best friend since childhood, her maid of honor at our wedding, and her biggest supporter during the divorce. If anyone knew Lila's secrets, it was Rachel. I called her back. Nick, thank God. I was starting to think you'd left town or something. What's so urgent, Rachel? Can we meet somewhere? I don't want to do this over the phone. I'm not really in the mood for a heart-to-heart about Lila's feelings. This isn't about her feelings. This is about the truth, about what really happened during your marriage. I paused. Rachel had never been my biggest fan, but she wasn't stupid. If she was reaching out, there had to be a reason. The Rooster's Nest, tomorrow at 7. The Rooster's Nest was the kind of dive bar that served as neutral territory in a small town like ours. Dark wood, cheap beer, and enough ambient noise to cover a private conversation. I arrived early and claimed a corner booth where I could watch the door. Rachel showed up 10 minutes late, looking nervous. She'd always been pretty in a wholesome, girl-next-door way, but tonight she looked tired, stressed. Thanks for coming, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. What's this about, Rachel? She ordered a whiskey neat, which surprised me. The Rachel I remembered drank white wine spritzers. How much do you know about Lila's life since the divorce? Nothing, I made it a point not to know. Right, well, things haven't been going great for her. I'm not looking for a sympathy play here. Just listen, okay? She took a sip of whiskey and grimaced. Lila's been telling people that you were emotionally cruel during your marriage, that you controlled her finances, isolated her from friends, made her feel worthless. She's been playing the victim for 4 years. I felt my jaw clench. And you believed her? At first, yeah. I wanted to believe her. It made the affair easier to justify, you know? Poor Lila, trapped in a loveless marriage with a controlling husband, finally finding happiness with someone who treated her right. But I lived through your actual marriage, Nick. I was at your house every weekend. I saw how you treated her. You worshipped the ground she walked on. You did everything she asked, gave her everything she wanted. You weren't controlling, You were a doormat. The truth stung, but I appreciated her honesty. So why are you telling me this now? Rachel finished her whiskey in one gulp. Because Evan's getting cold feet. He's starting to ask questions about her stories. And if he starts digging, he's going to realize that if she lied about you, she might be lying about other things too. What other things? The affair didn't start when you caught them, Nick. It started 2 years before that. Maybe longer. And you weren't the only one she cheated with. The bar suddenly felt very quiet, despite the usual Friday night crowd. How do you know this? Because I helped her cover it up. I provided alibis, I backed up her stories. I even lied to you directly when you started getting suspicious. I thought I was being a good friend, but really I was just enabling a serial cheater. I ordered another beer, needing time to process this information. Why are you telling me this now? Because she's doing it again. She's been having an affair for the past 6 months, with her boss at work. And I think Evan suspects something, which is why he's suddenly so interested in clearing the air with you. He wants to make sure her stories about your marriage hold up under scrutiny. And if I show up at the wedding, happy and clearly not a terrible monster, it raises questions about what else she might have lied about. Exactly. But if you don't show up, it reinforces her narrative. The bitter ex-husband who can't move on. I sat back in the booth, finally understanding the game being played. My presence would expose Lila's lies, but my absence would validate them. Either way, she'd manipulated the situation to her advantage. What do you want from me, Rachel? I want you to know the truth, and I want you to know that not everyone believed her stories. Some of us remember what you were really like, but you never said anything. For 4 years, you let her trash my reputation. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. I know, I'm sorry. I was scared of losing her friendship, and by the time I realized how far she'd gone with the lies, it felt too late to take it back. It is too late. Maybe, but you deserve to know that the people who matter, the people who actually knew you, never bought her victim act. I finished my beer and stood up. Thanks for the information, Rachel, but I'm still not going to the wedding. What are you going to do? I looked down at her, this woman who'd helped destroy my reputation to protect a lie. I'm going to go home and live my life, just like I've been doing for 4 years. But as I walked to my truck, I was already forming a different plan. If Lila wanted closure, I was going to give it to her, just not the kind she was expecting. Saturday morning, I called Tommy Reeves, my old Marine buddy who'd started a private investigation business after his discharge. Tommy had been my best man at the wedding and one of the few friends who'd stuck by me during the divorce. Nick, how's the boat business? Good. Listen, I need a favor. Professional consultation. What kind of consultation? The kind that involves my ex-wife and her new husband. Can you meet me for lunch? Tommy's office was above a sandwich shop in downtown Millbrook, our picturesque New England town that looked like a postcard but gossiped like a small-town soap opera. He'd done well for himself. The PI business catered mostly to insurance fraud and cheating spouse cases, which apparently kept him busy enough to afford a nice office and a new truck. So what's the story? He asked, unwrapping a meatball sub. I filled him in on the wedding invitation, the pressure campaign from Lila's friends, and my conversation with Rachel. Tommy listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or raising an eyebrow. You want me to dig up dirt on them? I want to know what I'm dealing with. Rachel mentioned Lila's having another affair. If that's true, Evan deserves to know before he marries her. And if it's not true, then I'll know Rachel was lying to manipulate me. Tommy wiped marinara sauce off his chin. What's your real endgame here, Nick? Because this sounds like you're planning something. I'm planning to protect myself. If Lila's been spreading lies about me for 4 years, I need to know exactly what she's been saying and to whom. And if she's still cheating, well, that's information Evan might find useful. You sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. I thought about the voicemails, the desperate visits from Lila's friends, the 4 years of whispered conversations that stopped when I walked into local businesses. I'm sure. Tommy charged me his standard rate plus expenses, which seemed fair for potentially destroying my ex-wife's reputation. He promised preliminary results within a week. While I waited, I decided to do some investigating of my own. Social media had never been my thing, but I created a fake Facebook profile and started looking up people from my old life. What I found was enlightening. Lila's social media presence was carefully curated, lots of photos with Evan, inspirational quotes about love and forgiveness, and subtle hints about her difficult past and journey to healing. She'd mastered the art of playing the victim without explicitly saying what she was a victim of. But the comments told a different story. Her coworkers and newer friends left supportive messages about her strength and courage, while people who'd known us as a couple were notably quiet. My old friends from work, neighbors from our previous house, even some of her own family members, none of them engaged with her posts about the upcoming wedding. Evan's social media was more revealing. His real estate business page showed a steady decline in client testimonials over the past few years. The reviews that were there focused on his professionalism and market knowledge, but avoided any mention of trust or integrity, the kind of language you'd expect for a small-town realtor who depended on referrals. More interesting were his personal posts. Lots of photos of expensive dinners, weekend trips, and new purchases. Either his business was doing better than the reviews suggested, or he was spending money he didn't have to maintain an image. On Tuesday, Tommy called with his preliminary report. "You're not going to like this," he said. "Hit me." Rachel was telling the truth about the current affair. Lila's been meeting her boss, David Henley, at the Marriott in Westfield twice a week for the past 6 months. I've got photos, credit card records, the whole thing. I felt a strange mix of vindication and disgust. What about Evan? Does he know? Hard to say, but he's been asking questions around town about your marriage. Specifically, he's been trying to verify some of Lila's stories about why you got divorced. What kind of stories? The mistreatment allegations, mainly. He talked to Dr. Morrison, remember your old family doctor, asking if you'd ever brought Lila in for suspicious injuries. He contacted your former employer, asking about your anger management issues. He even tried to get information from your lawyer about the divorce proceedings. My blood ran cold. What did he find out? Nothing that supports her stories. Morrison told him he'd never seen any signs of mistreatment. Your old boss laughed at the anger management question. Apparently you were the most even-tempered guy in the office. And your lawyer, of course, told him to pound sand. So Evan's having doubts about marrying a cheater, and he's trying to verify her justification for the cheating in the first place. That's my read on it. And here's the kicker. I think Lila knows he's been checking up on her stories. My source at the Marriott says she's been increasingly paranoid during her meetings with Henley. Keeps checking her phone, looking over her shoulder. Any idea why they want me at the wedding so badly? Best guess? They need you to play the role of the bitter ex-husband who can't let go. If you show up angry or emotional, it validates her victim narrative. If you don't show up at all, they can say you're too bitter and controlling to even be in the same room as her. But if I show up happy and successful, it raises questions about why the cruel ex-husband is doing so well, while the victim is clearly struggling. I thanked Tommy and hung up, finally understanding the full scope of Lila's manipulation. She'd built her entire post-divorce identity around being my victim, and my recovery threatened that carefully constructed narrative. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd invited me to play a role in her drama, which meant I got to choose how to perform it. Wednesday evening, I drove to Lila's apartment complex. I hadn't been there since she'd moved out of our house 4 years ago, but Tommy's surveillance report had included her address. It was a generic luxury complex on the outskirts of town, all granite countertops and stainless steel appliances with no soul or character. I waited in the parking lot until I saw Evan's BMW pull out, then walked up to her door and knocked. She answered wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair in a messy bun. For a moment, I was transported back to Sunday mornings in our old kitchen when she'd make pancakes while I read the paper. Then I remembered why I was there. "Nick, what are you doing here? We need to talk." She stepped aside to let me in, and I was struck by how impersonal the space felt. Expensive furniture arranged like a showroom. No family photos, no personal touches. It looked like a place someone was temporarily staying, not a home. "Can I get you something to drink?" "This won't take long." She sat on the edge of the couch, nervous energy radiating from her. She was still beautiful. That hadn't changed, but there was a brittle quality to her now, like she might shatter if handled roughly. "I know about David Henley." The color drained from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Marriott in Westfield, Tuesdays and Fridays. You've been meeting him there for 6 months." She opened and closed her mouth several times before finding words. Why are you having me followed?" "I'm not. But when your friends start showing up at my house, begging me to attend your wedding, I get curious about why my presence matters so much. Lila stood up and walked to the window, wrapping her arms around herself. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're cheating on Evan the same way you cheated on me. David and I are just... It's complicated. It's not complicated. You're a serial cheater who can't commit to anyone because you're always looking for something better. She spun around, eyes flashing with anger. You don't know anything about my life. I know you've been telling people I was cruel. I know you've built your entire identity around being my victim. And I know that my showing up at your wedding, happy and successful, destroys that narrative. You were emotionally unavailable. You never listened to me, never made me feel special. I gave you everything you asked for. I worked 60-hour weeks to pay for your shopping trips and spa days. I agreed to move to a bigger house we couldn't afford because you wanted to impress your friends. I went to every one of your work parties and smiled while your coworkers treated me like your accessory. That's not how it was. That's exactly how it was. And when you got bored with having a husband who actually loved you, you decided to see what it would be like to screw my friend. Lila's face crumpled, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married. Vulnerable, lost, desperate for someone else to fix her problems. I made mistakes, Nick, I know that. But I can't change the past. No, but you can stop lying about it. What do you want from me? I looked around her soulless apartment, at this woman who'd destroyed our marriage and was about to destroy another one, and felt nothing but pity. I want you to stop using me as your excuse. You cheated because you're a cheater, not because I was a bad husband. Own your choices. And if I do, will you come to the wedding? I almost laughed. Even now, in the middle of being confronted with her lies, she was still trying to manipulate the situation. No, Lila, I won't be attending your wedding. But not because I'm bitter or can't let go. I won't be there because I have better things to do with my time. I walked toward the door, then turned back. One more thing. Evan's been checking up on your stories about our marriage. He knows you've been lying about me, which means he's starting to wonder what else you might be lying about. You might want to figure out your priorities before you walk down that aisle. I left her standing in her perfect empty apartment and drove home feeling lighter than I had in years. The next few days were blissfully quiet. No phone calls, no surprise visits, no desperate voicemails. I almost thought the whole thing was over until Tommy called Friday morning. You stirred up a hornet's nest, he said. Lila and Evan had a massive fight Wednesday night. Neighbors called the cops about the noise. What happened? Best I can piece together, she told him about your visit. He confronted her about the lies she's been telling about your marriage. She broke down and confessed to the current affair. Is the wedding off? That's where it gets interesting. It's still on, but barely. Evan's been calling around town trying to do damage control on his reputation. He's been telling people that Lila was confused about your marriage because of trauma, and that they're working through her trust issues together. He's doubling down on the victim narrative. Exactly. But here's the problem. Now that people know she lied about you, they're starting to wonder what else she might have lied about. And Evan's desperate attempts to control the story are just making him look worse. How so? He called your old neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, trying to get her to say she witnessed you being emotionally cruel toward Lila. Mrs. Patterson told him he was crazy and hung up on him. Then he tried the same thing with the Kowalskis from your old street. Same result. I felt a grim satisfaction. Our old neighbors had watched Lila and me together for years. They'd seen me mowing her parents' lawn when they visited, helping her carry groceries, walking our dog in the rain because she didn't want to get her hair wet. If Evan thought they'd lie to support Lila's victim story, he was delusional. What about her job? That's the other problem. Her boss, the one she's been sleeping with, got spooked when Evan started asking questions around town. Henley's married with kids, and he can't afford a scandal. He's been trying to end things with Lila, but she's not taking no for an answer. Jesus, it gets worse. Rachel Murphy called me yesterday. She wants to hire me to document Lila's harassment of Henley. Why would Rachel do that? Because Henley's wife is her cousin. Apparently, Lila's been calling the house, showing up at family events, even following Mrs. Henley to the grocery store. Rachel's tired of watching her friend destroy other people's lives. The irony was perfect. Rachel, who'd enabled Lila's lies for years, was finally ready to hold her accountable, but only because it was affecting her own family. Are you going to take the case? I'm thinking about it. but I wanted to check with you first. Make sure you're okay with me working both sides of this thing. Do what you think is right, Tommy. I'm done trying to manage other people's choices. That afternoon, I was in my workshop sanding cabinet doors when Mrs. Clary appeared at my back door with a plate of cookies and a hungry look in her eyes. Mrs. Clary only baked when she had gossip to share. "Nick, dear, do you have a minute?" "Of course. Come in." She settled herself on my workbench stool and arranged her skirt primly. "I had the most interesting conversation with Eleanor Patterson this morning." Mrs. Patterson had been our next-door neighbor for the entire 8 years of my marriage. She was also Mrs. Clary's bridge partner and primary source of neighborhood intelligence. "Oh?" "She said that young man, your ex-wife's fiancé, called her asking the most peculiar questions about your marriage. Wanted to know if she'd ever seen you yell at Lila, or control her comings and goings, or isolate her from friends." "What did she tell him?" Mrs. Clary's eyes sparkled with indignation. "She told him he was barking up the wrong tree. Said in all the years she lived next to you two, she never once saw you raise your voice to that girl. Said you treated her like a princess, maybe too much like a princess, if you asked her opinion." "Did she say anything else?" "Oh, she had plenty to say. Told him about all the times you shoveled her driveway when she was sick, how you always waved and asked about her garden, how you helped her son move furniture that one time. Said you were the most considerate neighbor she'd ever had." Mrs. Clary leaned forward conspiratorially. Then she asked him why he was so interested in defending a woman who was cheating on her husband. Said if Lila needed to lie about her marriage to justify her behavior, maybe he should think twice about marrying her. I couldn't help but smile. Mrs. Patterson had always been direct, but apparently age had made her even more so. How did he respond to that? Hung up on her. Can you imagine? The rudeness. Mrs. Clary stayed for another 20 minutes, sharing every detail of the conversation she'd had with Mrs. Patterson, who'd had conversations with 3 other neighbors, all of whom had been contacted by Evan in his desperate attempt to validate Lila's stories. The picture that emerged was of a man in full panic mode, trying to shore up a crumbling narrative before his wedding day, and failing spectacularly. After Mrs. Clary left, I sat in my workshop thinking about the chain reaction I'd started with one simple conversation. By confronting Lila about her lies, I'd forced her to confess her current affair to Evan. His attempt to verify her stories about our marriage had only exposed more lies. And now their entire relationship was built on a foundation of deception that was cracking under scrutiny. I hadn't set out to destroy their relationship. I just wanted them to stop trying to drag me into their drama. But sometimes the truth has its own momentum. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday afternoon at the Millbrook Country Club. I had no intention of attending, but I was curious enough to drive by around the time it was supposed to start. What I saw was chaos. Cars were leaving the parking lot instead of arriving. A small crowd of people stood outside the main entrance, talking in animated groups. Through the windows, I could see someone, probably the wedding planner, gesturing frantically while talking on her phone. I parked across the street and called Tommy. "Please tell me you're not stalking your ex-wife's wedding," he said by way of greeting. "I'm conducting reconnaissance." "What the heck happened here?" "You didn't hear? It's all over town. The wedding's been postponed." "Why?" "Lila had a complete breakdown this morning, showed up at David Henley's house at 6 a.m., demanding that he leave his wife for her. When he refused, she started screaming at his kids, telling them their father was a liar and a cheater." Jesus Christ. Mrs. Henley called the cops. They didn't arrest Lila, but they strongly suggested she might want to seek professional help. Rachel Murphy picked her up from the police station. I watched as more cars pulled out of the country club parking lot. "What about Evan?" "He's inside trying to convince the remaining guests that the wedding is just delayed, not canceled. But word is already spreading about what happened this morning. People are putting the pieces together. The affair, the lies about your marriage, the harassment of the Henley family. So it's over? The wedding? Yeah, I'd say it's over. The relationship? Hard to say." Evans invested a lot in this image of himself as the guy who rescued Lila from her cruel ex-husband. Admitting that story was a lie means that admitting he's just another guy who stole someone else's wife. I hung up and drove home, feeling oddly deflated. I'd expected to feel vindicated or satisfied or something. Instead, I just felt tired. That evening, I was grilling dinner on my back deck when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Evan's name. "Nick, it's Evan. Can we talk?" "What about?" "Everything, this whole mess. I think I owe you an apology." "You think?" There was a long pause. I know I do. Can I come over? I'm in my car outside your house. I looked through my front window and saw his BMW parked at the curb. Come around back. Evan looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past week. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive shirt wrinkled and stained. He walked onto my deck like a man heading to his execution. Nice place, he said, looking around at my modest but well-maintained house. Thanks, want a beer? God, yes. I handed him a bottle and took my own seat at the patio table. We sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the evening sounds of the neighborhood. She lied about everything, he finally said. I know. The mistreatment, the emotional manipulation, all of it. You never heard her, did you? No? She told me you were controlling, that you monitored her phone calls and isolated her from friends. But I talked to people who knew you both. They said you bent over backward to make her happy. I took a long pull of my beer. Why are you here, Evan? Because I destroyed my life for a lie. I lost my best friend, ruined my reputation, and nearly married a woman who's been cheating on me from day one. You didn't lose your best friend. You chose to screw his wife. Evan flinched. I know that, but I thought, she made it sound like you didn't appreciate her, like you were holding her back from being happy. I thought I was rescuing her. From what? From you. From a loveless marriage. From a man who didn't understand her. Did you ever ask me about any of this? In all the years we were friends, did you ever once ask me how I felt about my marriage? No. Did you ever suggest couples therapy or communication or any of the things a real friend might suggest? No. You didn't want to rescue Lila from an unhappy marriage, Evan. You wanted to steal her from a happy one. There's a difference. We sat in silence again. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance, and somewhere a lawnmower was running despite the late hour. What am I supposed to do now? Evan asked. I don't know. That's not my problem to solve. I've lost everything. My reputation, my business relationships, my self-respect. Half the town thinks I'm a homewrecker, and the other half thinks I'm an idiot for believing her lies. Both halves are right. Evan laughed bitterly. Yeah, they are. He finished his beer and stood up. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for believing her lies about you. I'm sorry for trying to validate those lies by harassing your old neighbors. And I'm sorry for destroying our friendship over a woman who was never worth it. Apology accepted. Just like that. Just like that. I'm not interested in carrying grudges, Evan. They're too heavy. He walked toward the gate, then turned back. Can I ask you something? How did you get over it? The betrayal, the humiliation, all of it? I thought about the question seriously. I stopped making other people's choices about me. You didn't cheat because I was a bad friend. Lila didn't cheat because I was a bad husband. You both cheated because that's who you are. Once I understood that, the rest was just logistics. Logistics? Divorce lawyer, new phone number, new address, new life. The hard part wasn't getting over what you did to me. The hard part was getting over who I thought you were. Evan nodded slowly. I hope someday I can be as mature about this as you are. You will be. Or you won't. Either way, it's not my concern anymore. After he left, I sat on my deck until the sun went down, thinking about closure. Lila had wanted me at her wedding to provide it, but closure isn't something you can get from other people. It's something you give yourself when you're ready to stop letting the past control your present. I'd found my closure 4 years ago when I decided to build a new life instead of trying to fix the old one. Everything that had happened this week was just noise. Other people's drama playing out in the background of my actual life. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, I thought it might be Lila, but it was from Jennifer Walsh, the woman I'd been dating for the past 6 months. How was your day? Still on for dinner tomorrow? I smiled and typed back, Day was interesting. Dinner sounds perfect. Looking forward to it. And I was. Jennifer owned a CrossFit gym downtown, had never been married, and approached relationships with the same straightforward honesty she brought to everything else in her life. She knew about my divorce, but she didn't treat me like damaged goods or try to fix me. She just enjoyed my company, and I enjoyed hers. That was what a healthy relationship looked like, I'd learned. Not the dramatic highs and lows of my marriage to Lila, but the steady satisfaction of two adults who chose to build something together. I finished my beer and went inside to plan my Sunday. I had a boat to finish, a business to run, and a life to live. Whatever happened to Lila and Evan next was their story to write. Mine was just getting to the good part.